Hey guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, looking at the Google Play edition of the HTC One M8, which is sold in the Google Play Store for $700 and is running a stock version of Android. Now, if you look at the packaging of the one sold by the carriers or sold directly from HTC, you can see the packaging is pretty much the same, but as you can see, all of these features are no longer highlighted on the Google Play edition, but some of them are here, and we're going to explore exactly what that means. So although this is running a stock experience, this is running the latest version of Android, there are some HTC Sense 6 features in here, so we'll take a look at those. This has the same specs as the version I reviewed, so it has the same 2.3 gigahertz quad-core Snapdragon 801 processor, 2 gigs of RAM. This one has 32 gigs of internal storage, and this does have a micro SD card slot that supports 128 gigs. Of course, has that same 5-inch full HD 1080p IPS LCD display. I think it's called Super LCD 3 or something like that. Has a pixel density of 440, so an excellent display. Now we have the same dual or duo camera feature, which again does work with this device, and we're going to explore exactly how that works without Sense. Now this is only sold in glacial silver, so you can't get the gunmetal color, so if you want that you'll have to go with a non-stock version, and it doesn't of course have the gold color. So let's go ahead and crack into this and take a look. Alright, just cut the plastic and peel this back. Now if you look closely at the packaging, you'll see that that glacial silver color actually is picked up on the box itself. So let me pop the lid. And there we go. Now, as you can see, we still have HTC Advantage with this device, meaning that if you crack the display within 6 months of ownership, they will replace it. That's good for one occasion. You also get 50 gigs of online storage through Google, so you get 50 gigs added to your Google Drive account when you activate this device. Now, we also have Android software update commitment, so that means that HTC is committed to updating this to the latest version of Android for 2 years, at least 2 years. Now, this is running stock Android, close to stock Android, which means that it's more likely to get the update more quickly than something like the versions running HTC Sense 6, just because Sense 6 has to be ported to the latest version of Android. And if you're running the version operated by a carrier like I am here, that significantly delays launches of new versions of Android on these devices, just because the carrier then has to push it out. So if you want the latest version of Android, really this is your best choice. So let's go ahead, pull this out here. HTC One Google Play Edition. We're going to set that aside for just a moment, so we're going to take a look at the contents, which I'm sure is the same. So instead of having the sticker on the back of the phone, they just give it to us on this label here, so you can apply it to the back of the phone. That has your serial number. And we have a SIM ejection tool, which is used to eject the SD card slot, again, 120 gig SD card, as well as the nano SIM. So if you have an iPhone 5 or 5S, you can install your nano SIM in here. HTC Google One M8 Google Play Edition, again, instructions on how to remove those trays, safety regulatory guide, warranty statement. Of course, we have HTC stickers. There we go. I've actually never seen these applied to anybody's car, so maybe I'll be the first. But there you go. We have the, let's see, the USB cable. This is a micro USB cable. So again, pretty familiar territory here. We also have our wall adapter. So there you go, HTC branded wall adapter. Pretty compact and portable. It also gave us some headphones, and it looks like they're white this time. They're not red. That's kind of interesting. So let me pop this off. Alright, so we have some HTC branded in-ear headphones, and they do give us some replacement ear tips, so if you want to find the ones that fit your ear precisely. You also have a remote, an inline remote and microphone, so you can answer your calls, hang up, play music, pause music, that sort of thing, and then you have your microphone. So again, white as opposed to red and black, as I saw with the one I unboxed and reviewed previously. Alright, so let's slip it out of its sleeve here. I actually don't have to peel it off. Alright, so taking a look at the back, you have your 4 ultra pixel camera. So you can see the main camera is right there. Then we have the dual camera. The dual camera is there to pick up depth information, which allows some effects to be applied, which I'll explore in this video. You also have your LED flash, which is a dual LED flash. And as you can see, there are 2 different colors that allows the flash to adjust the color temperature to the scene and give you more natural light. Now we also have a little microphone built into the antenna insulator. And if you look at the body of the phone, you can see it's got this unibody construction. It's 90% metal as opposed to 70% metal from last year, or the M7. So it gives you a very rigid unibody design, more rounded design, very comfortable in the hand, very solid construction. Toward the bottom we have our micro USB charging port, which you can see is offset a bit here. Then you have your headphone jack, which has been moved from the top of the device to the bottom of the device, which I definitely prefer. Then you can see we have another antenna break. Now, if you look really closely at these antenna insulators, you can see that they apply something called zero gap construction, which basically looks like the plastic and metal have been merged. They're absolutely seamless. You don't feel the material at all. So very nice construction. And if you look at the front, you'll see we have a nice polished chamfered edge, which is even more prominent on the glacial silver version as opposed to the gunmetal version. Toward the front, you'll find one of your speaker grills, which has this sort of plastic material. So you can see it's got a kind of a grain to it, which picks up on the metal, but still plastic, which I guess kind of picks up on the smoothness of the glass while still retaining the visual cue of the metal. Now, if you look really closely here, you can see that the speaker is only on the left side and the mouthpiece is toward the center, while the rest is really just there for symmetry. Toward the top, it's the same story here. The speaker is toward the left-hand side. And then we have our proximity sensor right next to that, as well as that 5 megapixel front-facing camera, which HTC actually calls a selfie camera. Now, this gives me an opportunity to show you the difference between the glacial silver and the gunmetal color. So as you can see, it's not just the color, it's also the finish. So the gunmetal color has this nice grain texture to it with that polished look, as opposed to the more conventional anodized look, which looks very similar to the M7. So you can see the M7, very similar, slightly different texture, slightly different color, but very similar overall. But that gunmetal color gets that nice finish, which is too bad it's not carried over to the other colors. The gold color is also similar to this finish as well. It doesn't have this nice grain like the gunmetal does. You can also see that the antenna insulators are color matched here, so you can see they're black on the gunmetal version and white on the glacial silver. You can also see that other things like the ports are color matched as well. Now, as you can see, the M8 is quite a bit larger than the M7. So the M7 was 4.7 inches, this was 5 inches, but you can see it's now much taller, and it's also a bit wider than the M7. So the device does feel substantially bigger in the hand than the M7, especially if you go from the M8 to the M7. This actually feels a lot smaller now. Now, the great thing about the M8 is that they removed the off-screen Android controls, which were non-conventional. These did not reflect the behavior of stock Android. So they're now on-screen, which means that Google can run its own Android keys. Alright, so let's go ahead and boot this up for the first time and take a look at the stock experience along with some HTC tweaks. Alright, so we're all set up and ready to go. I've logged in with my Google account. Now we can take a look at the user interface. Now, one of the features they've retained from the HTC Sense experience is motion launch. So you can double tap on the lock screen to wake it up, so you can quickly take a look at your notifications, the time, that sort of thing. You can also swipe anywhere on the screen to unlock it. Takes you directly to where you last left off. Now, a few motion gestures aren't here. So, for example, you can't swipe in from the left to get to blink feed. You can't swipe in from the right to get to your widget panel. It just unlocks the device. So any gesture you make on the screen will unlock it. Even the swipe down gesture, which is used as voice dialing in the Sense 6 version. So no matter what you do, just unlocks the display for you. So I actually really like that. I'm glad that was retained. That's one of my favorite features from Sense 6. Now you can quickly launch the camera app just by rotating it to landscape orientation and hitting the volume button. Again, another feature carried over from HTC Sense 6. But of course, this time we're launched in the stock Android camera app. Now the interesting thing here is that this Google Play Edition is running Google Now Launcher. So this is similar to the Nexus 5. So for example, you can see we have our transparent Android keys here on the home screen, and you can swipe to the right to get to Google Now. You can also talk to it. Okay, Google, what's the weather like tomorrow in Chicago?
Tomorrow's forecast for Chicago is 48 degrees and clear.
You can also tap and hold anywhere on the home screen to get to your editor. Again, this is a Google Now Launcher feature, so you can adjust your wallpaper, add widgets, or jump directly to settings. Now, talking about settings, if we go to our settings panel, you can see there are a few additions here, such as our motion launch gesture. So this isn't quite stock, but you can see not all of the launch features are here. So you can disable this if you prefer, but it is on by default, and you can see the available gestures that are available here. So double tap to unlock the device, swipe to unlock, and the volume button in landscape orientation to launch the camera app. Now if we go to sound, we'll find HTC Boom Sound. So you can see that again, just like on the Sense 6 version, it's on by default if you're using the internal speakers. But if you attach headphones, you can toggle this on and off and use your own equalizer. Now, HTC has added one other feature here under settings, which is HTC Weather Service. Now, this is necessary for the dot view case to work. So if you're not familiar with this case, it's basically a $50 case that provides full 360-degree protection to your phone. So it covers the back as well as the front, but it's perforated, so when you tap the screen, it actually gives you some information here. So you can see your time as well as your weather. Now, unfortunately, this is the only thing the case can do on the Google Play Edition. You can't answer phone calls. You can't see text notifications. All of that is not available here. So unfortunately, this is the best it can do. Now, in order to use the IR Blaster, you can install the HTC Sense TV app, which is a free app. I can go ahead and install that and allow me to use the IR Blaster, but otherwise that's not included by default. So I can go ahead and set this up. It allows me to control both my AV equipment as well as my cable box. Now, taking a look at the camera app, it's pretty much stock Android. You can tap to focus. You can tap and hold anywhere on the screen to get to your settings. You can move between the front-facing camera, rear-facing camera, change your flash options, go to more options, go to your timer, exposure, lots of settings. You can enable HDR, but it's pretty much stock Android. So if you're familiar with stock Android, it's the same experience. You can also switch between photosphere mode, panorama mode, video mode, and camera mode. Now, what's really different is when you get to your photo editor. So if you look right now, again, it pretty much looks like the stock photo editor, but if you go to the editor down here, you now have the option for HTC Photo Edit. So if we select that, we now have the same, virtually the same interface as we get with the full Sense 6 version. So you have all those features and all those editing options. So one of them is U-Focus. Now, U-Focus is using the depth information from the dual camera to determine what's in the foreground and what's in the background. So when you tap on the elements in the picture, it blurs whatever element you're not focusing on. So for example, if I tap on the background, it focuses the background. If I tap on the foreground, it focuses the foreground. Now, it's not really changing the focus, it's just applying a filter. So it's kind of a smarter filter thanks to the depth information. Now, another feature here is Dimension Plus, which gives us this 3D effect. So if you apply this 3D effect, again, when you move the phone around, you get this little 3D effect. And as you can see, not necessarily the most successful example here, but you get the idea here. It works well in some instances, not great in others. And if you disable the automatic 3D effect, you can actually move it yourself, like so. And we also have lots of touch-up features, skin smoothness, lighting, face controller, eye enhancer, red eye illuminator, eye brightness, anti-shine. Now we also have tools, so we can rotate the image, we can crop it, flip it, straighten it, we can apply a frame, we can apply filters, and we can go back to our effects. So there you go, pretty much the HTC experience within the editor, but not necessarily in the camera itself. Now let's go ahead and demonstrate the audio of these speakers. I'm just going to use Dom at Mac Mixing's Amazon Fire TV unboxing as a little demo. He did a great job and has excellent audio with his video, so let's go ahead and test it out.
This is Dom, and today we are checking out Amazon Fire TV. This is the brand new set-top box from Amazon, and it has some pretty cool features such as a voice search enabled remote. Packed inside of Fire TV is a 1.7 gigahertz quad-core Snapdragon processor, 2 gigabytes of RAM, and a...
Alright, so let's take a quick look at some of the design differences between Google Play Edition and the Sense 6 Edition. So you can see that, for example, when we swipe to the right, we get Blink Feed as opposed to Google Now. Now you can quickly get to Google Now from both phones just by swiping up. It takes you to Google Now. Similar experience. And then if we look down at our drop-down notification shade, very similar experience. We also have our quick settings toggles up here. Of course, there are more of them on the HTC Sense 6. Of course, there's just a lot more customization with the Sense 6 version. We also have our app drawer, which is heavily enhanced with Sense 6 here. You have foldering, and you can go to your Google Play Store, you can search, you can change the grid, you can customize by, you can sort them by alphabet, by custom. Now, the recent apps launcher is also very different. So, for example, we have this grid view, which limits us to 9 recent apps as opposed to infinite scrolling here on the Google Play Edition. So, in conclusion, I'm actually surprised by this version of the HTC One M8. They've retained a lot of the great HTC Sense 6 features, such as motion launch, while giving us the Nexus 5 Google Now launcher, as opposed to the launcher we see with the other Google Play Edition. So, we get the best of everything on this device. We get great hardware with those great stereo speakers, which makes this the best sounding surrounding device. We get the beautiful 5-inch Super LCD 3 display, which makes it one of the best looking devices. And we get a stock Android experience, which I think looks a lot better and works a little bit better than the HTC Sense 6, but we retain all of the useful features that HTC Sense 6 introduces. And of course, we can still use our dual camera for all of those special effects. So definitely impressed overall by this phone, and I can definitely recommend it, and I'm sure this is going to be my go-to Android phone for 2014. So that's going to do for me in this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.